ageism, you're going to see this on your test, I promise you. So ageism is like stereotyping and prejudice against people because they're of a certain age group. And it can be by a system, an organization, or even just person to person. So in an organization or a system, it can be like, we're not hiring anybody over 50 because people over 50 are going to run into health problems, they're going to want to retire sooner, I got to pay them more. If I hire somebody who's 20, I don't got to pay them that much because they don't have no experience, you know what I'm saying? There's lots of reasons that people will do ageism, okay? So some examples of that up here. Some of the things that people think about elderly people are that they can't continue to learn and grow, which we know is not true. So when we look at things like technology, stuff like that, when you're talking to your patients out anywhere and say, you know, like you want to teach them something and how do they best learn, ask them. Do you use a phone? Do you use a smartphone? Do you use apps? You may be surprised at the answer. Might be big with big keys if they can't see, but so what? You know, that doesn't matter. So people are living longer and healthier now. You know, we're going to have a whole lot more centenarians than we used to. And then of course, mental and cognitive disorders are not a given because somebody gets older. So we know that, you know, a certain amount of the population are going to have Alzheimer's, dementia, things like that, but just because you're old doesn't mean you get it. Most older adults have 3 or 4 chronic illnesses though, and they take, on average, 8 to 12 different pills a day. So I mean, it's a lot to keep track of, right? So they're at a higher risk, obviously, of getting hospitalized. Once you're 85, look out, man. You could get a lot of stuff. Dementia, immobile, incontinent. What a thing to look forward to, right? Maybe we should just stop at 85. And then women usually outlive men by like 7 years, which is a long time. And then a lot of older people, you know, are living under the poverty line. So they're not only on a fixed income, but they're actually less than, you know, having enough money. So when we think about medications and stuff like that, money becomes a real issue. And you know, as some of you saw in Choices, when we can get those $4 lists from Walmart and things like that, because, I mean, this just happened in my own family. My mom got something for her GERD. I don't know what it was even now, because she wouldn't pick it up. She said, oh yeah, well, you know, I got this. You'll like this, you'll appreciate this. I got a hiatus hernia. No, you don't, Mom. You got a hiatal hernia, but okay. I got a hiatus hernia and GERD, and I went to get this medicine, and it was $147 for 1 month. Well, I left it there. Okay, but you need it. So, like, did you ask about a generic? Did you you know, no, she didn't do any of that stuff. So we're going to have to revisit that. But she left it there. Okay, so like they need these lists of these cheap medicines. The physicians, swear to my life, they don't know. They don't have any clue. They're just like, this is what you need, here you go. I don't know what it costs, right? So as nurses, a lot of times we're going to follow up on that.
I just wanted to say something I've run into where a lot of nurses don't know this, but a lot of pharmacy techs will have the GoodRx app in your phone. Anybody can have it. You literally just type in the name of the drug, and it pulls up the prices at Walgreens, CVS. You can compare, and it gives you the coupon code, and a lot of times it's cheaper than insurance.
Fantastic. So there you go. Put the GoodRx in your phone. Because actually that is handy, and you know, sometimes it's even that much of a difference of, I got to take the time to get it in there and look it up, and you can just pull it up and be like, hey, guess what? Here it is, right? So we don't want people going without. We want to help them get what they need, okay? This is really important. This slide right here is important. I can tell you there's at least 3 test questions based off of the information on this slide. Because of the stuff we do know about older people, if you're going in to interview an older person, their cognition slows. It doesn't mean that they are not intelligent. It doesn't mean that they have dementia. It just means that they slow down some. So you need to slow down some. When you go in to introduce yourself to a patient, I think all of you know this. I'm just reminding you, because you are going to see it, you need to ask them what they want to be called, right? Don't assume someone wants to be called by their first name. They're an adult that's older than you, so you should, out of respect, ask them what they prefer to be called. You need to talk maybe a little slower, and you need to ask them if they can hear you, okay? Because I feel like, at least for me, I know that I do this. I tend to talk louder just because I do. When I'm talking to an older person, not on purpose, it just happens, you know? So finding out if they can hear you, okay? Because they may or may not be able to, or maybe they have really good hearing aids and they're like, stop yelling at me, okay? So, and in my case, slow down, okay? So we need to ask the question. Of course, relationships with other people. I go to the doctor with my mother-in-law, once in a while with my own mom. But you know what I've noticed is a lot of times, I would say most of the time, no one ever asks her, do you want her in here? That's really important, right? Because just because that's their ride, just because that person took it upon themselves to come in the room, does not mean that the patient wants them in there. So we need to say, right, would you like them to step out? Okay? Because that person may be like, hey, I belong here. And the patient may be like, get out. Okay? I don't want them in here listening to my whatever. Okay? So we need to be cognizant of, you know. And then the other thing is, of course, elder abuse. So you may pick up cues in that relationship by just watching the interaction. Okay? And then if the person's family has input, make sure that you're looking to the client for validation and verification of that input. Okay? If they don't have any kind of cognitive deficits, really you're always going to the source, right? So, yeah. And don't use elder speak, of course. That's just old business. So older people, they suffer from depression. And so it's sometimes hard to differentiate depression from dementia even sometimes. Or other physical illnesses. So there's the one thing that I'm gonna kind of hone in are some of the symptoms that are a little bit different for older people in depression. Older people tend to focus on their bodily functions a little bit more than other people, you may have noticed, especially when they poop. And they want to tell you about it. And that's okay. But when older people get depressed, sometimes they will get very hung up on lots of things going on with their body. They will have vague complaints about nearly everything. So if this seems to be the case, there's nothing really wrong, but it's kind of this is sore and this hurts and blah, and they're really, really into it, that is sometimes a cue that they are experiencing depression. There's sort of this chronic ache and pain type thing that just, for forgetfulness, this is where it can become tricky. We kind of need the baseline. We may not know, right? So the family may help with that. Same thing with the irritability and the complaining. Those are going to be hard to pick out on somebody you've never met. I mean, have you ever been sick? You're just plain cranky. If I'm sick, I'm cranky. You would maybe know the difference, but if you knew me, you would know the difference, right? Ruminating. Do you guys remember what ruminating is?
Over and over in your head. Like
yeah, going on and on about the same thing, right? Being pessimistic. So then we worry about suicide. So we know when you're 65 and older, you've got a higher risk, which is going to be the baby boomers now. This is kind of interesting and also very sad that 70% of older adults who commit suicide saw someone within the month before their death. So it doesn't mean that they weren't assessed, but were they? I don't know. So it's just interesting. It makes you wonder what were the symptoms like and what kind of things were going on before that. What were they? What did they present with? Would be interesting to know. And you know the usual stuff, right? Hopelessness, uselessness, that kind of stuff. But this is where some other stuff comes in, like finances, right? They get put on a new medicine. Your patients are saying things to you like, I can't afford that. I can barely afford the food I have. Then we have to start looking into that a little bit harder. What kind of help do you have? Do you find out that there's nobody around to help them? Well, my family's all dead. I don't have any friends anymore because they're all dead. You know, you really got to start looking at that, right? Look at the whole picture, what's going on. And then, of course, you know, we talked about medical illnesses adding to someone's signs of depression, functional disability as well. If I'm all alone in my house and I don't have much for money, or maybe can barely afford to be where I'm at, and then on top of that, I can't get around, why am I even here? You know, these are the thoughts that will start to enter people's minds that we have to be on the lookout for. So some things for older adults are things like widowhood. So, see, the guys, they can't do it without us. They just can't. They can't manage. It's just one of them things. Being acutely ill, of course, pain or chronic pain, substance abuse and alcohol abuse, for sure, okay? Any kind of previous suicidal stuff. And the other stuff we've already talked about when we talked about suicide, so just review that for yourself. Lethality of a plan, all of that, okay? When you're asking about this, here's an interesting question to ask an older adult. What kind of thoughts do you have about a person's right to take their own life? Okay? When we talk about things like most important thing you have to live for, that goes to meaning, right? If we don't have meaning in our life, what do we have? Okay, so these are different questions than what we ask younger people sometimes, but they're getting at the same information. Okay? Let's see. We've covered a lot of this already, so I'm not going to go over any more of this because this is all stuff that we already did. One thing, let's see, I didn't say that I want to cover is that STDs are on the rise in our older population. Yeah, people are living longer and, you know, still want to have fun. So we got to do some education about that. You know, obviously they don't need birth control, and I don't think. We'll just say they don't. And, you know, so that's a non-issue, but more partners. So we need to talk about condom use. There was a nice little spike in syphilis among older adults this past couple of years. So retirement homes, places like that, nursing homes, yeah. So we need to be cognizant of that, and I think that sometimes those questions get left off because people are uncomfortable asking them. But if you're doing an assessment on someone, right, you're doing a full assessment, I don't think we think too much of, well, we shouldn't anyways when we're talking to younger people about, you know, are you sexually active, are you having sex with men or women or both? To ask that question to an older adult, we still need to ask, right? Because if they're not thinking about birth control, they may not be thinking about STIs either. So.
That generation's really crabby about that stuff.
Aren't they?
Yes, they are.
Yes. It's one of those things that if you're uncomfortable, you don't bring it up. And it's like, you just got to get past that. You just do. Practice on people you're comfortable with. That's probably the best way. The more you say it, the less you care about it. Go ahead.
Oh, just like a statement. When we were in last semester, we got to watch them come with Harvest California, and it was on an older gentleman. And he said that you'd be really, really surprised how many elderly people actually have HIV, because they did the test right there. And we were like wanting to help him because he was flipping him over, and we're like, what are you doing? And he was like, I'm looking for like anal sex signs. And I was like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
And also, I'm going to say, I'm slightly put off by that because there's a lot of different ways a person can get HIV. And I just think, like, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that's a bit prejudicial.
Well, he looked all over the body, stick marks and everything.
Okay.
And
That's just part of
just
his.
like the general.
He would do that with everyone. He would do that with
Yes.
women too then, I'm going to say.
Yeah. That's
I'm such like,
but-
really, like, you know, make no assumptions. It's wrong. But yeah, we have to ask all those stuff. So stretch your legs, take a walk. It's a beautiful day.